Good morning, everybody, or afternoon, depending upon where you are. Again, it's great to have everybody here. Let me take a moment just to introduce myself. Again, my name is Steve Smith, sales executive here at Greenshades. I have been in business for about 20 plus years, done a lot of work on digital transformation initiatives with various partners and various projects. I do live an office here in New Orleans, Louisiana, and yes, it's true. I did once play blackjack with David Lee Roth. I was 21 years old, and I only wish someone had told me I peaked, that was as good as it was ever going to get. So now I'll turn it over to my colleague, Scott. Let him introduce himself.
Yeah, Scott Loudermilk. I have over 15 years of payroll HCM experience. I've been with Greenshades a year. I've worked, all different levels from small business to enterprise level. And I refused to give something like that after that one. I did not play blackjack with David Lee Roth. And I live in Wilmington, North Carolina. So, Dave, I'll let you take over from there.
Fantastic. Okay, just take a minute to go over today's agenda. So what we'll do is we'll start off kind of from 20,000 feet and look at the factors that are really driving change in 2024. This is what our partners, our clients are telling us is really driving change. So we'll take a look at the big picture. And then once we walk through that, then we'll focus in more specifically on several key items. So notably, we'll talk about compensation. We'll spend a little time talking about flexibility in the workplace. We'll talk about culture. We'll talk about technology, and then we'll wrap things up and do some Q&A at the end. Fair enough? Okay. So again, factors influencing change in 2024. What are our partners and our clients telling us is driving business change, change in the business environment for the upcoming year? And really, they're breaking it down into a few key areas. And so you can see those here. One of the things we hear over and over again is that it is still a tight labor market. It is still a war for talent. It's still difficult to find the right folks. And of course, that drives initiatives around enhancing employee retention. It's never been more valuable to keep your best and your brightest. The other thing that is really coursing through the economic and business environment is this idea of economic uncertainty. We're in a higher interest rate environment than we have been previously. And as we continue to recover from and move on from the COVID pandemic, there's really not a lot of certitude in terms of future business environments. Always, we hear concerns about technological advancements because those things don't stop, they only speed up. And then finally, we hear a lot about workplace culture and supporting employees, and that's because the workplace is changing, and we're going to kind of touch on that a little bit. So when we talk about evolving workforce, this is what it means. It's the interesting demographic information here is that in less than 10 years, Gen Z is projected to constitute about 30% of the workforce. So you can see those breakdowns. Baby boomers projected to be down to 19% of the workforce, Gen X 35%, millennial and Gen Z. So why does that matter? What's the big deal? Well, the reason that matters is that the way we think about work and the way work has typically been organized is driven by the experiences of primarily those baby boomers and those Gen Xers. So millennials, Gen Z, digitally native individuals bring completely different perspectives, completely different ideas into the workforce, and they have completely different expectations. And this is exerting a lot of pressure overall in the business environment to respond to those changing expectations. Would you agree, Scott?
Yeah, I would agree. I think the big things I see is workplace culture. I mean, I've seen reports that's almost more important than what they're getting paid, and that it's all digitally. Like, your electronic onboarding, you really need to make a first impression, a good first impression with these guys. It's very different than when I first entered the workforce, where, it's like, please give me a job. Now it's, maybe I'll come on board if you give me the right stuff. So it's a very different environment. And I think keeping up on technology and creating that right kind of environment is what we need to do.
Yeah, absolutely, Scott. Thanks for that. I agree. I think another thing to keep in mind is that in large part, the folks who are setting strategy and budgets within organizations are more likely still to be members of either that Gen X or that baby boomer cohort, which means it's never been more important than now for those folks to be able to hear the voices of others within the organization so they can understand these changing priorities. Okay, so let's now dive into a few different key areas where we're seeing change. And we'll start with compensation. Just the idea broadly of changes in pay in the way of increases and also overall flexibility. So here's the interesting number. I'm going to make sure I share that with my boss, this slide particularly. Employers are planning an overall average salary increase 4% for 2024. And what are the key drivers? Number one, inflation concerns. Everybody sees it, everybody hears it. You see it at the gas pump, you see it in the grocery store. It's a real thing, and it impacts everybody. And then the second key is that tight labor market, the fact that it's still difficult to attract and retain tight talent.
Yeah,
so those items. Go ahead, Seth.
Sorry. No, I was just going to say, and I think we'll get into this a little bit, but it's the days of staying at your job for years on end are over. I was in leadership before this position, and if somebody had 3 years in a job, I was like excited about it. So I think really setting up the right environment really is important to keeping your employees and making sure you hold on to that staff, because it's not as easy to replace as it used to be.
Absolutely. And so let's kind of dive a little deeper into that topic of inflation and the idea of creating economic pressure on the workforce. So you can see from some of these trends and these changes that this sort of illustrates the point. So we're seeing a rise of 12% in the number of employees that are living paycheck to paycheck from 2022 to 2024. You're seeing fewer employees feel like they have control of their finances, and fewer employees that even say they have a 3-month savings cushion. So that's down 10% from 2022. So all those things are indicators of that level of economic pressure. And so the way we see employers addressing that in the way of pay raises, they feel like typically these are the key wins. So first of all, obviously enough, those salaries are key to attracting highly skilled professionals. Second, that compensation is directly increased to employee morale, job satisfaction. You're more likely to keep an employee that feels good about what they're doing and where they work. So again, you reduce that turnover, you foster employee loyalty. And adjusting pay to market trends, just make sure you're competitive when you're going out to get those new employees. And the fact of the matter is it promotes a culture of equity and inclusivity when employees feel like they're fairly compensated.
Yeah, I think it's real important, especially in this day and age where everything's online. They can go compare things. They can look at different types of salaries in the similar jobs. So it's important to stay on top of this and make sure you're compensating your people. And when you're talking about compensation, you're talking about salary, retirement, benefits. All those things have to match up. I mean, employees will get down to, really looking at it. Okay, you're paying me the same, but this insurance is 3 times as much. So you got to make sure you're on your game as far as the benefits on what you're offering your people.
Yeah, totally agree. And it's not just external or economic pressures. Some of the other ways we're seeing compensation impacted is due to regulatory change. So as of 2023, we've now got 10 different states with pay transparency laws. And so these laws vary in the ways they're written and administered state to state. But generally speaking, what they do is they require employers to disclose salary compensation information specifically for employees that work in those states. We expect that those transparency laws are going to continue to grow. There are some that are pending in various legislatures for 2024. So we think this is a trend that is probably not going away. I think many of us are old enough to remember one of the biggest taboos in the workplace was don't talk about how much you make. And now we're seeing it's just another big cultural change, right, Scott?
Yeah. I still laugh at it. People are like, oh, what do you make? I'm like, I can't tell you that. I'm like, well, actually, now it's not as big of a deal. I think with this, you're seeing regulation in general. You're seeing a lot of states require retirement, some form of retirement. You have to offer it. So when you're a company and your payroll and HR departments, you have to give them the tools to really be able to do this, because the days of just writing a check and here you go and are over. You have to keep up on new regulations, what your state's doing, and if you're in multiple states, what each state's doing. So having a solution that can kind of do all that for you, I think is imperative in this day and age, because you can get yourself in some real financial trouble by just making an honest mistake and not following all the rules that are now popping up.
Yep, for sure. And then when you get down to it, we also see a focus in the area of compensation on just executing and deploying technology in a way that allows more flexibility. So we're talking about just making sure that employers deliver to their employees no matter what the circumstances. So no matter how complex those calculations are for payroll, because you may have different types and kinds of payroll, obviously making sure you stay in compliance. And flexible pay distribution, different ways for employees to receive paychecks, and direct deposits, making sure they're able to access those things virtually, and just being able to overall think about this as a payroll strategy to deliver earnings to employees in the most flexible way possible.
Yeah, I'm thinking 2024. Yeah, obviously the days of an employer telling you, my people don't want direct deposit. I personally think that's over. I think most people want direct deposit, and they want to be able to. Well, and one, this also saves your staff, your back office staff time. Like they want to be able to pull up their pay stubs when they need it. They need to go get their W-2s when they need it. Things like that a lot of systems will enable. And then there's also all different now that you can get all different, earned wage access and things like that are available out there. And again, having a solution that can handle all that stuff, I just think makes your life as the back office people and your employees' life easier.
Yeah, totally agree. Okay. So beyond compliance, let's talk about workplace flexibility.
Okay, and why we add that poll? Evolving requests for flexible work options. You're seeing 83% have a positive outlook on their organization culture, compared with 47% without flexibility. 14% of employees are talking about burnout, and 71% of remote workers said remote work helps balance their work and personal life. So since COVID, really the big switch has been it's really not just remote work, but the flexibility. So whether that's you work remotely and you don't have to go in the office, or you do a hybrid, or if you have the type of job where you have to be on site, that whether it's through scheduling or giving the employee more control over their schedule is, I think, what employees are looking for. So a lot of it depends on what type of job they do.
Yeah, I totally agree, Scott. I think one of the things that happened during the pandemic is that many organizations were sort of forced to confront the sort of this is the way we've always done it approach that some organizations can have. Let's face it, when organizations are successful, when things go well, when they are profitable, there's a great temptation to simply say, we're going to keep doing things the way we always have. COVID forced some change. And I think maybe the learning outside of it is for organizations to continue to be agile, to continue to be flexible, to continue to question and seek out better approaches.
And we're transforming the workplace. So you want to give your team more than just a physical office. You want to create an environment that really nurtures them. This sounds ridiculous to maybe some of us older, but give them a reason for a commute into the office. Really kind of build their professional life, and show you the employee's commitment to their growth and development. So it's not just a paycheck; it's the whole package, as we've talked about. Growing them as an individual, paying them correctly, giving them the right benefits. So I think really that's where part of the change is taking place. So their employees are looking for an environment that kind of builds these relationships. I mean, I'll use an example. Greenshades is pretty much remote, but we do a lot of joint team calls, like a webinar like this, and it's honestly, it's really great to talk to different people in different departments, and it really helps foster that relationship. So I think that's what employees are looking for.
Yeah, I think the bottom line is increasingly employees explicitly want to feel like they belong.
Yep. Yeah. And the other thing is, I think you need to, again, we've been talking about this, but support your employees no matter where they are. So you have to have things in place to support a remote work environment. So you need to handle the complexities of managing multiple states, multiple taxes, whether it's a no state tax Florida to Pennsylvania, Ohio, where I have locals. You have to have a system to be able to handle that easily. You need to know the different laws in different states. The difference between where I live in North Carolina and California is a big difference. Taxes have to be set, forms have to be, handled efficiently. And, employee needs to have access to the payroll, their HR, their taxes, really with the younger generations on their phones. So you have to, again, it goes back to having a solution that enables you to provide all this to your employee while making your back office life easier because you're going to have people in all these different states.
Yeah, and in one sense, this is a technology argument, but really I like to think of it as a cultural argument, because from a technology perspective, these are solved problems, and employees know that they are, right? Because employees compare you not only to your competition in your industry, but they compare you to every other interaction they have with technology, and so their expectation is that their employer is going to work to deliver a supportive experience, whenever, wherever, in the same way they interact, in their daily life, whether it's banking, shopping, etc.
Yep, I agree. And again, cultivating a positive workplace culture. I mean, that's what we're going to be talking about. And I think that's a real important part, again, especially with the younger generations, that they expect it. So you want to create an environment for them to grow and thrive in. And it's time to evaluate workplace culture. 19% of employees label their workplace as toxic. So that's kind of the big thing that we've hearing, toxic workplaces. I just heard it on the news about some congresswoman today about, the staff is turning over because of the environment. Again, very different than when I remember when I first started working, but that's a big part of it. And you've got to put together an environment that really fosters a positive attitude in this day and age. And again, like Steve said earlier, the solutions are out there. It's you kind of picking the right ones that meet your company's needs and providing them to your employees.
Yeah, it reminds me of this famous scene from the show Mad Men, where Don Draper is talking to one of his employees, and the employee says to Don, "You never say thank you." And Don yells at her. He says, "That's what the money's for." And I think it's kind of like that show is set in the 1950s. They would not write the scene the same way in 2024.
No. And you got embracing company culture in remote environments. So again, you're going to have people, and again, depending on your industry, but there's still a lot more remoteness than there used to be. So even if you have people that have to go to a job site or a certain location, they still may not come to the office first. You still can now reach out to them all together if they're not all in one place. But a strong culture, strong workplace performance, helps you retain talent. It boosts productivity. You maintain a company reputation and enhance employee mental health. So all these things are brought up. When I was hiring people, your goal is, if you find the right person, you don't want to lose them, because it's hard to replace them. And over the different environments, you need to make sure make your people feel part of the company. You don't want to leave them out there on an island alone if they're remote and they don't feel part of the culture. I think it's really important to foster that kind of environment in this day and age.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, Scott. I think that idea, that's maybe the biggest potential downside of hybrid and remote work models, is that employees can sometimes feel like they are on that island. And so I think it's incumbent upon organizations to recognize that and be proactive, lean into particular solutions and approaches for their remote workers to make sure that's not the case.
Yeah, I think on a positive note, to boost productivity, you never realize how much time you wasted talking to your coworkers until you worked out of your house. Like, oh, great, I got a lot done today. So there's positives to it. And I think that the best thing is you can utilize technology to help foster the positive work environment. So effective onboarding, you need to have, in this day and age, a lot of these people don't even have a computer, they have their phone, maybe a tablet. So you have electronic onboarding, so it's easy. They can fill all their forms electronically, it's done, and it flows right into the payroll system. So I think that's important. You need to have seamless communication for employee self-service. So again, getting their pay stubs, getting their W-2s, getting company notices, having an app or a web-enabled solution that allows them on their phone that, hey, we're having a company meeting next week, or, the company party is casual attire, whatever it may be, that you can really communicate with your people. Again, that helps with the hybrid or remote work, helps bring people all together. Payroll should be correct now. You should be able to track their time, no matter whether they're in the office or remote, pay them accurately, pay them on time, and give them all those tools. you want to have comprehensive benefits this day and age. Again, this was a few years ago. I saw a survey, but the benefits for like millennials and Generation Z are a big part of what they're looking at. So I think that's important. And then you want to have, performance management where employees can grow within the company. We talked about that earlier, but I think all those things are important to company culture and can be put together and given to a company by the right solutions.
Yeah, I like to think about this kind of like any relationship. I mean, when you think about it that way, it's kind of a way to contextualize these approaches. For example, onboarding is just like the first date. You dress up, you make sure you look your best. You want to make a great first impression. And then any good relationship involves constant, effective communication. Any good relationship involves trust, doing what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it. Any good relationship involves caring about how the other person feels. And then finally, any good relationship is about always trying to make the relationship better. So when you look at it that way, it's just a way to engage with and approach your employees as a whole, I think.
Great analogy. Yep. So adapting technology. So, you're going to be able to have to adapt as we get more, it's more technology driven. So let's take a look at that, Steve. And shift toward the tech savvy workforce. So why is the shift to embracing technology happening now? There's generational influence. Like, again, the younger generations do everything on their phone. Sometimes they don't even talk to each other. They text each other when they're next to each other. So tech savvy environment. There's a lot of options out there. Demand for efficiency. That's really a big one. And that's on both sides. That's your employees expect an efficient way of using their work tools. And it should be on HR and payroll side. Steve, you have a great analogy that I'm going to say wrong, so I'm not going to steal it, but you were talking about, why it should be easy to use your work tools.
Well, it's not my analogy. I can't take credit for it, but I had a CFO tell me this once. He was evaluating technology and adopting some technology, and he said an employee had come to him and said, "Why is it easier for me to manage my kid in summer camp than it is for me to manage my technology relationship with the workplace?" And I think that speaks to that whole idea that we have all, including employees, we have all been trained by these technologies, cutting edge technologies developed by folks like Amazon or what have you. And so we have become habituated to this technology, and it drives our expectation for it in the workplace, I think.
Yeah, and the last two bullet points: competitive edge and increase in remote work. Like your employees are not just, they're comparing you against your competition. They're comparing you against their old companies and how they've had it and what they expect. And then again, with the remoteness of work, you just need to have it. It makes, again, all what we've been talking about makes the company environment, the employee experience, all that stuff better. And then moving beyond all in one. So, and not too long ago, you had to have one solution that did everything. Well, I think what we've learned is certain companies do one thing very well, but they may not do everything well. So you don't have to have the same payroll HR company and the same time and attendance company. You have to have solutions that have the flexibility to talk to each other and communicate. And I don't think they can be separate, but through integrations and technology, you can get what best fits your needs for your work environment without, you shouldn't have to give in to have one solution. You shouldn't have to, have issues with, the time's okay here, but everything else is great. You should be able to pick what you want, and you should pick a system that has that flexibility to work with others.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that it's become really a critical evaluation piece when we talk about adopting new technologies is, hey, does your technology play nicely with others? Because we need to integrate this into our tech stack. Yeah.
Yep. You can tell we've been doing this a while. That was literally the next thing out of my mouth, but yeah. Next slide, please. Yeah, and then implementing new systems smoothly. So let's think about this. You have your ERP accounting, you have your applicant tracking, you have your payroll and HR software, you have learning management, and you have time and attendance. And you don't need to have one thing that does all of I think you need to have a solution, say, usually either accounting system or the payroll HR is really kind of the hub. And you need to have systems that can talk to your so payroll and HR, let's just use that example. I think you need to have something that can integrate or a very customized import to your accounting system. Again, that's making things efficient in the back end. And then the applicant tracking, the time, and the learning management really makes your employee experience easier and a nicer experience. So I think you look at, you need to, when you discuss your potential solutions, gain insight from your leaders of what they want. So yeah, having HR and payroll just pick the solution doesn't always work, because maybe the solution they pick, the time's not great. I think you need to work as a team, pick the right solution, and then each department or each division their needs need to be met to have the right work environment. And I don't think you need to pick one solution anymore. The big companies did a real good job years ago of convincing everybody they had to be one, but I think technology now has kind of proven that that's not necessary anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when it comes to actually, delivering on these systems, I think that organizations need to kind of have an honest conversation with themselves first. And what I mean by that is, where are you as an organization in terms of your project bandwidth and experience? Because it varies greatly, right? Some organizations have lots of in-house experience that have worked on many projects, implemented many different systems, and they feel really good about their ability and their bandwidth. Other folks are different. Maybe they haven't had as much project experience. Maybe they're less experienced and they have less staffing. And those things need to be taken into account in terms of how we get the idea and turn it into a deliverable. And I think hand in hand with that is the discussion with potential partners and providers to make sure that there is discussion beyond the review of the system. Because, dirty little software secret, most demos look really good. But one of the most important questions is, hey, how are you going to deliver this? How are you going to turn this project into a reality for our organization? And how are we going to ensure that we are going to measure and execute on the deliverables we are seeking during this process?
Yeah, I think if you pick the right software, you should be able to pick like the time and attendance solution that you want that best fits your needs, because each company's different. You may have somebody who has a fantastic payroll HR software, but their time is fine, but it's not what you need. You need geofencing or something like that. In this day and age, your solution, well, again, I think it's either payroll or ERP, should have the ability to integrate with different solutions, talk to different solutions, and fairly easily. Or, we live in a world of open APIs that these integrations can be built. So I think when you're deciding that, I think IT is more, in my opinion, IT is more involved in some of these decisions than they used to be, because I think they need to know what the options are and how we build our own custom system that best fits our needs. And then here we're going to wrap up and some Q&A. So if you have any questions, please let us know. We'll be glad to answer them. I think some key takeaways from today's conversation: rethink your payroll strategy. If it's not giving you everything you want, it's time to take a look. You should be able to get yourself almost everything. Maybe not 100%, but really 85, 90% of what you want should be there. Utilize the technology, automate the processes. There's no need, people shouldn't have to fill stuff out in paper. They should be able to do things electronically. And that, again, speeds up everything for the employees onboarding to the back end, to the payroll. And I think it creates back to that great environment. And then optimize the payroll technology and HR technology. Use it to your advantages. Some of the big companies out there, I've won deals in the past because they're not using half of it. So don't buy something that you're not going to use half of it. Pick what you want and use it, that best fits your needs. I think that's the best way to do things.
Yeah, I agree. I think when you're thinking about that strategy piece, it reminds me of an old story somebody told me many, many years ago. It's like one of these sales stories. When somebody goes to the store and buys a drill, they don't need a drill, they need a hole. And what I mean by that is that rethinking of overall business strategy, especially for the cohort, within this meeting that is talking about, evaluating systems over the next year, let's say, this is the ideal time to look inside the business and have those discussions and create outcomes, desired outcomes. Like where is the business falling short? Where do we need to make business improvements, whether it's to plug some holes or whether it's to take advantage of what we see as opportunities in the marketplace. But one way or the other, what are the deliverables? What do we need to be different tomorrow than today? And once those things are articulated, those are the things that can really guide an evaluation and an approach to technology, because you've always got to keep in the back of your mind, what do I want to get out of the technology? The technology is just a tool to get me somewhere down the road. And if I don't have a picture of where that is, then I'm just sort of wandering.
And this is a shameless plug for Greenshades. Greenshades has your payroll, your human resource, benefit admin, tax compliance, time and labor management. We have a solution. We integrate with multiple ERPs, GP, BC, Sage, Intact, Bullhorn, and working on more. And we have partners that, if our time doesn't fit your needs, we have partners that have different solutions. So we really adhere to that philosophy that, be the hub, but integrate with these different solutions. If something we have doesn't fit your needs, fine. Then we have partners that do a little bit more or do something differently than we do. But I think that accounting software integration, that the data flows back and forth, I think is great, with the supposed changes in GP in the future, have that flexibility to, if you want to move to BC or move to something else, have a payroll solution in place that already has these integrations built. So it's IT guys may scream at this, but it's plug and play. It's easy to, kind of easy to make that transition.
All right, fantastic. Well, a big shout out to Stephen and Scott for taking time out of their day to walk us through today's webinar, Navigating Tomorrow. We really appreciate that. Well, thank you again for being here, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.